Now this is the Waymo IONIQ 5. Now of course, the Jaguar I-Pace is the current vehicle that Waymo uses for their Robotaxi fleet, but the Jaguar I-Pace is no longer in production, and as Waymo expands, of course, they're currently in San Francisco, Austin, Orlando, Miami, they're expanding across the continental United States and even abroad. They're going to need more vehicles to expand. And so this is one of them. Now you might be familiar with the Zeekr Ojai, and that is the giant blue MPV. That is also going to be another one of the vehicles that is helping to replace the Jaguar I-Pace. Unlike the IONIQ 5, which I believe is more similar to the Jaguar I-Pace in that it's a 4-door passenger kind of crossover SUV, the MPV is taller, it's easier to get in, has more room. It's going to provide a more luxurious experience. Imagine more on the highway, where something like this is going to be more for your city. On top of that, with the economy and tariffs and things like that, the Zeekr Ojai is made in China, and they have to import it into the United States. And with that could be tariffs, which makes things a lot more expensive. And so you find an automaker who produces a car domestically, a good EV that's reliable and everyone knows here in Georgia, and well, you upfit it with your Waymo 6th generation hardware and software, and you make a Robotaxi. And so this is really going to help Waymo scale because, again, it's going to be produced here in Georgia. This exact unit, actually, what Hyundai is going to be doing, about 90 to 95% of this vehicle is going to be produced here in this factory. Then the additional 5 to 10% will be produced in Arizona with Magna, and they will add in some of the cameras, the computers, and things like that. But the entire vehicle, what you're seeing here, for the most part, will be produced. And that's going to help Waymo scale, build more vehicles, and also just have a good vehicle that replaces the Jaguar I-Pace. Now, I should mention the Jaguar I-Pace is not going away anytime soon. It's expected to continue to stay within Waymo's fleet, and as we know it, they'll probably use them until the wheels fall off. Now, Waymo originally purchased, I believe, like 1,500 of those Jaguar I-Paces. Then when the Jaguar I-Pace went out of production, they ended up buying like the rest of the 2,000 that they had in inventory. And as of today, Waymo has more than 3,000 Robotaxis in their fleet across the United States, actively in use. That means that, well, give or take, Waymo doesn't have many other Jaguar I-Paces that are not currently in their fleet to put on the road, which means they're going to need new vehicles. And again, this is where the IONIQ 5 and the Zeekr Ojai come into place. They continue to build out their fleet of autonomous robotaxis. And hopefully the I-Pace stays within its fleet for quite some time. We can actually just go inside and see. And this is just like your regular IONIQ 5. Now, one of the big differences, unlike the Ojai, which again, MPV, easy to step in, it'll be a larger vehicle, the Ojai does not have a steering wheel. The Robotaxi IONIQ 5 is still going to have everything that you recognize with a IONIQ 5. The driver's seat will not allow anyone to be seated in it, but it will still have the steering wheel, the screens, all of that. But of course, you move into the back here, and that's where everyone is most likely going to be seated. You're gonna be sitting here in the back in your Robotaxi IONIQ 5. And I gotta say, the IONIQ 5 is a very nice vehicle. Of course, you got good leg room, good headroom. It's very nice. And of course, we got this one with the second row down. But unlike the Jaguar I-Pace, which I believe like certain sections of it are like blocked off because they have things like computers and then there's cooling for some of those computers. And of course, we see some of the head unit above here kind of poking out, which is kind of funny, but it's not blocking your view. I mean, other than this, you wouldn't be able to tell that you are in a regular, good feeling IONIQ 5. Now, this new hardware from Waymo that we see on top of the IONIQ 5 looks similar to the hardware that we see on the Jaguar I-Pace, but this on top of the IONIQ 5 is their 6th generation hardware, which has better LiDAR, radar, all of the cameras and sensors. It has external audio receivers, so it can hear things like sirens from ambulances, fire trucks, police vehicles. It also has better compute. And so this is really just a better iteration on top of what works currently on the Waymo Robotaxis that they have. Now, one of the big things that is going to help Waymo here is that they have a vehicle being produced domestically. I saw this Waymo IONIQ 5 at Hyundai's meta plant outside of Savannah, Georgia. And so it's going to be produced there. As I've mentioned, 90% of the vehicle will be produced at this factory, with an additional 5 to 10% being produced in Arizona from Magna. And so on top of it being produced by a domestic automaker, an automaker that is probably not going away anytime soon, the IONIQ 5 by itself is a much better vehicle than the Jaguar I-Pace. Now, I'm sure Waymo got a really good deal on these vehicles, mainly probably because the Jaguar I-Pace just isn't that great of an EV. It has pretty slow charging, it isn't efficient, and it has poor range. The IONIQ 5 fixes a lot of these problems. It has a much quicker charge time, it has much better range, and it is much more efficient, which means the IONIQ 5 is going to be on the road much longer for much more time. I imagine Waymo wants to have these vehicles on the road as much as possible, come in, be cleaned, charge as quickly as possible, to then be put on the road again. You don't want a vehicle sitting there after it's already been cleaned, just charging. You want to have a high uptime, and the IONIQ 5 is definitely going to be a huge improvement over the Jaguar I-Pace. The Jaguar I-Pace is going to get older and older. It's going to be used by people, accumulate hundreds of thousands of miles, and it's, you're gonna have to repair it. And if the company that was making the vehicle no longer makes any vehicles, because Jaguar doesn't make any vehicles right now at the moment, well then what do you do? And so having an automaker like the Hyundai Motor Group to be able to be there for service, parts, things like that, it just means that we're not only going to have more robotaxis, but a higher uptime, which again, that's what Waymo wants. Now I gotta say, the IONIQ 5 is probably the best choice that Waymo could have made when it comes to picking an EV. When it comes to costs, efficiency, charging, availability, the IONIQ 5 is up there with the Model Y. If you're a big traveler and you've been across the world, particularly Europe and then South Korea, then you would know that the IONIQ 5 is used as a taxi and an Uber like non-stop. I remember last time I was in France, there were IONIQ 5s absolutely everywhere. And this was like in 2023. I was just in South Korea. If you guys watched my video where I spot EVs in South Korea, really fun. There were IONIQ 5s and 6s absolutely everywhere. And that's because as a vehicle, it's good. It has great riding, it is smooth, and as a backseat passenger with a flat floor, I think it's just a comfortable vehicle. Now I gotta say, I'm glad Waymo went with the IONIQ 5 as a vehicle that they're using. Not only is it an electric vehicle, which is perfect for fleets, the same continuous kind of route per day. You don't need to have it be filled up. It's just cheaper to use an electric vehicle. I should also mention that Hyundai has a partnership with Motional, which they own a stake in, that's also producing robotaxis. But unlike the Waymo, those Motional IONIQ 5s, I believe, are actually being produced in South Korea, which is kind of funny. And I believe those will also be kind of made in the same way, where a lot of the fitment is done in production, and then some of the additional fitment is, computers and the cameras are done in the United States, because Motional, I believe, is currently testing in Las Vegas. But Waymo is way bigger. You like that? Waymo is way bigger than Motional, and they're gonna need a lot more cars, and it makes sense to produce it here domestically for Waymo in the United States. And so you will see a lot more of these coming into 2027. I believe they're already testing these in San Francisco, which is absolutely very cool. I'm excited to have a ride in a Waymo. I can't imagine it's gonna be much different than what you already experienced in your Jaguar I-Pace, but except it is in an IONIQ 5.